think there's a lack of support sometimes. I think when people finally realize that the partner they're with is not the partner that they should be with, suddenly they find themselves doing it on their own. For women, they had that other partner who was helping to support them. Suddenly they have to be self-supportive. They have to do it on their own. They have to manage more responsibilities than they already had. So I think having a support base of some kind, whether it's a social group, whether it's a therapist, whether it's divorce coaches, people feel lonely. They feel like they have to do it on their own, that there's nobody out there that understands what they're going through. And that's not the case. There is a huge community of people out there that want to help.
For Ron, this conversation isn't only professional, it's deeply personal too. Nobody really prepares you for how much life can unravel during divorce. Not just emotionally, practically too. The bills, the schedules, the paperwork, the loneliness of trying to make decisions while your entire future feels uncertain. And somewhere in the middle of surviving it all, you realize how much support you used to have without even noticing. Because rebuilding a life alone sounds strong in theory, but in reality, most people are exhausted. Exhausted trying to hold everything together for their children. Exhausted trying to stay financially afloat. Exhausted trying to appear okay while quietly falling apart inside. And maybe the real problem isn't that people are weak during transitions like divorce. Maybe it's that too many people are trying to rebuild without support. And that's exactly why I wrote The Gift Inside, because sometimes the seasons that break us open are also the seasons that rebuild us into someone stronger, wiser, and more intentional, especially when we stop trying to carry everything alone. Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Welcome, Ron. You're a serial entrepreneur and a co-founder of NASDF, National Association for Single and Divorced Families. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
So please share with us a little bit about yourself.
So where do we begin? I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been in different businesses for most of my life. I started off in the insurance business where I ran different companies, did product development. So people came to me with very niche type insurance products to place, and we were able to do it. I worked with my father in the business at the time. And then I transitioned over to real estate for the last 23 years. In between there, I became a foster parent. I ended a very toxic relationship that took a while to get out of my system. I was able to take 5 years and really work on myself and do the hard work and do the therapy and everything else that I needed to do to realize what it is to be loved unconditionally versus conditionally, like I was brought up. I've since met my now husband of 16 years, and I'm in a beautiful relationship. And my son I ended up adopting my foster son, and he is now 37 years old. He's made me a grandparent. So I've taken all of that experience, all the good, the bad, and people that I've helped over the years to transition their lives and poured it all into our association, which is the National Association for Single and Divorced Families. And in order to describe what it is that we do, if you've heard of AARP, which is a very big retiree type association here in the United States, they provide product services and support for people who are 55 or older. We provide product services and support for people who are in the process of getting a divorce or have a single family household. So we realize that people who are in transition, like I was, need some kind of support team. And that support team can come in mental health, that can come in discounts for early childhood education, career services. There's lots of different things people need when they're in the process of getting a divorce, aside from hiring an attorney or a mediator or a divorce coach. So we wanted to be able to be that umbrella of product, services, support, and resources for people who are in this process. That's part of my story. What we've also created, which nobody else had before, was the only divorce insurance product on the market called Support Insured. And Support Insured guarantees your child support and alimony payments for up to 1 year. If the person who is paying suddenly dies, becomes disabled, involuntarily unemployed, so they were downsized by their job, or if they are a business owner and they have to close the business and declare business bankruptcy, we'll continue making those child support and alimony payments for up to 1 year.
Wow, incredible. Came from your own experience through going through all of that and your father dedication to this interesting new product that
Yeah,
never
my dad was an
existed.
idea man. He would sit down every day and say, "You know what I was thinking is that," I'd be like, "Oh, okay, no, we can't do that." But then, sure enough, one day he sat down at lunch with me and said, "I always wanted to put together an insurance product that would guarantee child support and alimony." And I thought, "That's brilliant." And then I said, "Well, we have an association. Why don't we change it to cater to people who are getting a divorce?" He said, "That's brilliant." But he didn't want to start the association until he had the insurance product placed. Unfortunately, he tried for 30 years and every carrier went back, every insurance company came back and said, no, we don't want to do it, until I found the right insurance company that said, yes, we want it, we love it, let's do it. And that's how we created both the association and the insurance product at the same time.
Totally. If you had to point out one place where the system breaks for most single and divorced parents, what is it and what does it actually look like in real life?
I think there is a lack of support sometimes. I think when people finally realize that the partner they're with is not the partner that they should be with for whatever reason, and they've been married to that person for some time, they have children, suddenly they find themselves doing it on their own, especially for men who a lot of times rely on their wives for the social life, for the scheduling, for everything with the kids, and now suddenly that responsibility has been placed on them, and suddenly that group of friends have all gone to the other side, and the male friends that the father has, it's they don't want to talk about it. These are subject matters that a lot of times they don't want to talk about. Or for women, they had that other partner who was helping to support them. Suddenly they have to be self-supportive. They have to do it on their own. They have to manage more responsibilities than they already had. So I think having a support base of some kind, whether it's a social group, whether it's a therapist, whether it's divorce coaches, or whatever it is, that support team is how the system fails a lot of times. And people feel lonely. They feel like they have to do it on their own, that there's nobody out there that understands what they're going through. And that's not the case. There is a huge community of people out there that want to help. There are support groups that are out there. There's women's groups, motherhood groups, fatherhood groups. There's podcasts that are out there that can help inspire, give you some direction. And that's why we've put that and we continue to build on it every day because we keep finding more resources. But we want to be able to put that under our association so that you could look for these things and realize that the system isn't as bad as you think it is, and that there is a good support team there to help you rebuild your foundation. And then moving forward, being able to establish that group, keep them to use them as a support team as you continue to restart your life.
What situation did you witness that made you realize this is a problem no one is solving when you came up with the
The
solution?
support insured. So currently, when you get a divorce, most divorces are going to require some form of life insurance if you're receiving child support and alimony. And what we realize is that that's great. I mean, unfortunately, if the person passes, you're going to get a large sum of money, which you can use for the children's education or for support or what have you. But there's a lot of times that, thank God, the person doesn't die, but that they do have a slip and fall at work, or they have a temporary disability that requires them to stay home, or AI is creating positions that they once occupied that they now find themselves unemployed because the AI is taking their job, or you're a restaurant owner, the economy changes and suddenly you find that your customers are gone and you have to declare a business bankruptcy. There are situations that occur that are not permanent, they're temporary, but typically up until now you had to go back to court and tell the judge, I can't afford to pay because I'm unemployed, and the judge will grant you sometimes a stay where you don't have to pay. But what about the person receiving the money? What are they suddenly supposed to do? It's like, I'm out working, I'm supporting the kids, I need that assistance, and suddenly it stops because you're unemployed. What do I do? So we realized that there was a gap that needed to be filled that nobody else was doing. And when we went to insurance carriers and asked them if they could do this type of insurance, they thought there was some kind of moral hazard. That if they had this insurance in place, the former spouse would try to intentionally do something to harm them to collect the money, and we thought that was absurd because it's not a lifetime full of money. It's a year's worth of money to go ahead and help them get back on their feet. We didn't understand that theory, but we were persistent and we managed to get it done. We also realized that when you go to get a divorce and you go to Google and you search for divorce, you get about 5 or 6 pages of attorneys, and you have to go deep before you get to resources and discounts and things that you need. You've been a parent, let's say the kids are 5 years old, you've been home for 5 years, you've got this gap in your resume. How do you go back to work with this gap? Well, if you go to our career services, we have a video on that, on how to use the things that you've done at home while you were taking care of the kids as things that you can use for employment. There are a lot of skills that you've learned along that time that you were at home that you can apply to the real world. You need to update your LinkedIn account. You need to learn how to get in front of the recruiter. You have to learn maybe how to dress for success appropriately or whatever. 25 videos that are on there that can help you re-engage the workforce so that you get the job that you want. And if you're still trying to figure out what it is you want to do when you grow up, utilize one of the career services people that we have on there that are going to give you a 25% discount because you're a member. So lots of gaps needed to be filled. I did not know that there were as many divorce coaches out there, that there were as many relationship coaches, that the mediators were less expensive than attorneys. All of these things, of course, I know now, but I did not know way back when I was getting my undivorce, my relationship was ending. I could have utilized those resources. I didn't know about them. So we want to make sure that people understand that there's lots of different options other than having to take an expensive option of hiring an attorney, that if you have a relationship that is ending and it's amicable, you might be able to file directly with the courts. You might not have to hire anybody, or you can hire a mediator that's going to be considerably cheaper. So we want to be able to present those opportunities and make sure that you see all your options.
Totally. I love that you created a hub with different solutions as people come through this. I think a lot of people get maybe disillusioned because getting married is so simple. You just go sign papers and off you go.
Right,
And divorce is so much bigger than that. And maybe people think, oh, I'm just going to get divorced.
right.
And then they find out what it really looks like.
Exactly. One of the things that came to us recently was somebody said, I don't have money to go ahead and hire the attorney or hire the mediator because my spouse controls all the funds. And they tried going for pro bono work, pro bono legal advice. But what they do is they combine the income of both you and your partner and realize that you make too much money, so you can't get free legal. So we're in the process of trying to create a credit card that specifically allows for you to charge your attorney fees, your mediation fees, and your court costs. And that's it. You can't use it to go shopping. You can't use it to buy clothes or what have you. There's no such credit card like that on the market. There are credit cards that are specific, such as Care Credit, that is for cosmetic surgery, pet care, things that were doctor's visits, and you can't use it for anything else. We would like to have something like that for the divorce market, so that if you are in that situation where somebody else controls the funds and you need to hire the attorney or get the mediator, that you can apply for the credit card, immediately have access to it. That's what we're working on next.
Amazing. I love it. And how long have you guys been in existence?
But the association's been around for about a year and a half. The insurance product has been out for 6 months. So as much as that sounds great, we have no competition. So that's exciting, right? But at the same time, it's also a problem because A, we have no competition. B, we have no competition. Nobody's heard of us. We have to get the word out. So that's why we do a lot of podcasts. That's why we're reaching out to family law firms to say, hey, there's this great insurance product. 100% of the people love it. And people are beginning to sign up and they're like, where have you been? Well, we literally just launched it. So it's a matter of how do we get the word out to get people to understand that there is finally an insurance product that can guarantee level of security for you financially.
Totally. So please share a little bit more. How does that look like? Is it determined based on somebody's income? What are the financials look like?
Yeah, if you go to nasdf.org, you're going to see a tab there for support insured. If you click the tab, it's going to give you a question and answers. All the questions you could possibly have, that at least that we think we've answered for you. And then you can go to the tablet that shows what the rates are. It's based off of your age and the amount that you're collecting from the courts. So if you're collecting $2,500 a month and you're 41 years old, the premium is, I don't know, I'm going to spit it out, $580 a year. It's not much, but I don't want you buying more than what the court's giving you. So if you buy $3,000 worth, but the court's only giving you $2,500, we're only going to pay you for $2,500. So don't buy the additional amount. It's not going to help. Just buy the amount that you're receiving. And then it asks you some very simple questions. So either you or the payer can purchase it. If you're trying to negotiate it in your court settlement to get the payer to go ahead and pay for it, and they say, no, we don't want to, you can buy it, but you have to have the information on the payer. And you should, if you're in a relationship with them, you probably know how long they've been with their job, whether they have any health issues, if they're currently on disability. Most of the questions are simple and you should be able to answer them. And then once you do, it takes a credit card payment. You get a discounted annual membership to NASDF, so you get all the benefits on top of the insurance, and it automatically renews every year.
And how long does it stay in place?
It's an annual contract, so it automatically renews every year. And if you need to make adjustments, you would just go in and send us a quick email at info@nasdf.org, and we'll go ahead and make the change for you on your behalf.
But I'm saying in terms of how many years, or as long as you.
As long as you're receiving the child support and alimony, it will continue to renew. Payments, if you actually put in a claim because of one of the perils, we will go ahead and make those payments for you for up to a year.
Thank you. I'm gonna
Absolutely.
switch gears a little bit to learn more about you. How you were a single parent to a foster child, I believe.
Yep.
So, what were some challenges you faced, and what helped you get through those?
The backstory is I went to visit. I was single at the time, and I went to visit a friend of mine in LA. And as he picked me up from the airport, he said, "Our plans have changed. I'm getting my foster kid today unexpectedly. Will you take this journey with me?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." I'm open to most things. I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's see what it's like." So I got to see him receive the custody of the child, and I got to spend time with the kid who was, I think, 8 or 9 years old at the time. And they wanted to celebrate, so they invited other families that had foster kids over to as a celebration for having this child. And I got to see other foster kids in the room, and I thought to myself, I could do this. I need to do this. As an LGBTQ individual, I didn't see children in my future, but when I saw this, I thought this is a good way for me to not only give back, but to be able to help a child have a better life. So I got back to Miami, went to a networking event, and this woman gets up and says, I need LGBTQ plus single and coupled individuals to take in LGBTQ foster children. And I remember looking up at God going, clearly there's a message here. So I went up to her, I said, I'm in. And we were the first group. There was about 25 of us to be part of this initial program that they had been establishing. And I remember the day that I got my license, they said, here's your license, there's your kid. I was like, whoa, I don't know this kid. Can I get to know them first before I take him into my house? And they said, yes, you've got 2 days. He's homeless. Figure it out quickly. And I'm like, okay. So I met the kid. His name was Michael at the time. And we had an initial meeting. I said, let's go have lunch. We sat at lunch. We got to know each other. We hung out for the rest of the day. It turned into a dinner. We hung out some more. Next day, we decided to meet up again. And again, we had a meal. We got to know each other. I took him to my house. I said, look, I don't even have a bedroom set up for you. I just moved into my house. Let's go shopping for a bedroom set. And he said, what? I said, yeah, we need a bedroom set. Get out. And he's like, I've never gotten to be able to pick out my bedroom sets. I'm like, well, welcome to my home. So we picked out a bedroom set. He was freaking out. He moved in. I was very specific about the rules of the house. This is your house now as well, but I own this place. And, I know he was going to smoke pot. I didn't want him smoking pot during the week. I said, you could do it on the weekend. I want you to be cognizant during the week when you're in school. You can't do it in the house. You have to do it in the backyard. I want you to he was 13, turning 14. I said, I want you to have a job as soon as you can so that I wanted him to have structure, which he had never had. I lived in a neighborhood where there were lots of restaurants. The community knew who I was. So he literally walked up the street to a restaurant, walked in, the guy hired him on the spot, called me and said, this kid is amazing. I know that, work with him as best you can. So he was in a good work environment. I took him out of the school that he was in, which was for troubled kids, because he was not a troubled kid. He was a foster kid. And I put him into a high school that was a bit of a drive from our house because the high school in my area was an F-rated school. I didn't want him going to an F-rated school. And the drive to school every day was a really good bonding experience for us. I've been coached in my business for years, and I've learned so much between journaling and coaching and setting goal sets and things of that nature. I wanted to initiate some of that into his mindset. While we were driving to school, I'd say, tell me what your future looks like. And he was very honest. He said, I don't see a future. I see today. And today I have to survive. And I said, okay, so are you open to having little goals that we could set every day? And he's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. Said, like, you're going to stay in school all day. You're not going to skip class. And he'd come home at night and we would sit and talk, and he'd say, oh yeah, I stayed in class. Okay, great. And the next day would be whatever little goal. And slowly but surely, it was cute, even because we listened to very different music. I'm a 70s kid, so I listened to rock and roll and things like that. And he was listening to rap. And on the way to school, I would put on different rock bands, and he'd be like, no, I can't listen to this. And surely after like 2 or 3 days, he was turning up the volume. And And then he was asking me who the band was, and then he was doing some research. And we began to bond over that drive to school every day. And then him coming home, we would sit and have dinner together. He challenged me a lot. I got a call from his sister one time that he was at the house. He had skipped school. He had somebody at the house and he was smoking pot and stuff. And I left work and I went home and he was like, "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" I'm like, "Great. Could you ask your friend to leave?" And he said, "Okay." And he asked his friend to leave. And I went into his room, took his suitcase out and started packing all his clothes. And he's yelling at me like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I put the suitcase on the ground. And I said, "You literally broke every rule we had in this house. You skip school, you're home smoking weed, you're done." I went through the whole list. I opened up the front door, threw the suitcase out the door and said, "Get out of my house." And he looked at me and he walked away and I slammed the door and I cried because I realized, oh my God, I had just failed this child. I failed him. And I called up the woman who had put the organization together and I'm crying on the phone and she's like, "It's okay. He'll be back in 2 hours. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You didn't back down and you showed him who the boss was in the house. He'll be back." And I'm like, "Oh." And I hung up the phone and 2 hours later, there's a knock on the door and I open it up and he says, "Can I come in?" And I said, "Yes, have a seat." So he sits down and he said, "You said you would never kick me out of this house." I said, "As long as you followed the rules and you broke all of them. And this is my house. I'm not going to have somebody living in my house who's not following the rules." And we agreed that night that he would try harder. I only had to do it like 6 months later. I had to do it again, but he got the message. And here's his background was that he had been through a couple of different foster homes where they locked the refrigerator, where he was sleeping with other kids in the room. And this was an unusual. He was testing me to see my endurance as to whether I was really committed to this relationship. And there's a story where he had skipped school another time. He was hanging out with his sister. He had seen his mother earlier that afternoon. She gave him some drugs that I think it was a Xanax or something. He was spaced out. They went to the Metro Rail station and he did something that caused the entire Metro Rail station throughout the city to stop because he had literally jumped on the tracks to pick something up and that caused the whole train system to have to stop. He was arrested, taken to jail. I get a call. I go to pick him up from the jail that night. He gets in the car and I start lacing it to him. I'm like screaming at him, A, how stupid it was. Why was he doing drugs with his mother? He had skipped school. Why do you keep testing me? And I'm like so angry as I'm driving. I'm banging on the steering wheel and I'm screaming at him. And he's sitting very quietly. He probably was terrified. But he said to me years later, "That was the time that I realized how much you were committed to me, that you got so angry because of what I had done and you were just basically trying to keep me alive." And I realized he's in. And he says, "I don't know if you noticed, but things changed after that." I said, "No, I didn't." And he says, "It was because you were treating me like a dad." So it was an emotional moment when he said that to me because I was as passionate. For me, I saw him as my child. And if my child had done what he had done, he would have got the same wrath as I gave him that day. And he realized that as well. So he's now 37 years old. I did adopt him. He's made me a grandparent. So it's no matter. No, I don't care about him anymore. I want my granddaughter. I'm joking. Um, he's funny as hell, but he does have lingering effects from his childhood. He does battle with addictions. There have been many, many times where we've had to put him in rehab. Times when I've had to make sure that he's talking to a therapist. Times we have not spoken to each other. So but there is this love and this commitment and devotion to each other that even he has said, "I know no matter how bad it gets, you're still there." And I said, "You're still testing me. I mean, you're 37. Can you please stop? I'm done. I'd like to enjoy my son and not have to deal with these." When there's addictions involved, it's always a challenge. I'm grateful to say that he's been sober for over a year. He's in therapy. He's working on himself. He's still making some poor decisions, but we work through that. And that would be whether he was my adopted son or he was my son. I mean, children go through this all the time. It was difficult being single at the time. When I did meet my now husband, their age difference was not much. And my husband really had his life together. He was a police officer. He had goals that he was trying to achieve. And here comes my son who's floundering and has drug issues. And they had a really hard time bonding. And what we ended up doing was going to a retreat of sorts, a house up in Provincetown. And it was just the three of us sitting at a kitchen table. And I said, "We're going to hash this out." And we were going back and forth. And at one time, my son got very upset. He stood up and I grabbed his hand. I said, "Sit down. We're not going anywhere. I know this is a tough conversation. We're going to work through this. Sit down." And he sat back down and we continued talking. He would run. He like, "I got to get out." And be like, "No, we're going to sit down." And here, my son at the time was in his 20s. So I'm talking to an adult now. And the three of us sat, hashed it out. And I remember at one point, my husband, who was not my husband at the time, I think we're in our second or third year being with each other. I asked my son, "What do you want?" He says, "I want you to adopt me." And I said, "Okay." And my husband said, "I'm not sure I want that." And I looked at my husband, I said, "It's not up to you. He's been here a lot longer than you have. This is something he and I are going to discuss." And my husband looked at it. We later went for a walk, and I said, "How were you with that conversation?" And he said, "It was stern, but I got it." It's like, I can't interfere in your relationship with your son. I'm too new to this relationship, and I get it. I mean, there are many reasons why I married my husband, because he understood that our relationship was very deep, but I had responsibilities that I had committed to before he came into the picture.
Mhm.
He acknowledged those responsibilities. He didn't always agree with them, but he acknowledged them and he accepted it. And that's why it's worked so well in our relationship. And I have a great deal of respect for my husband. So I wanted to make sure that that to a place where they could have a relationship. And they did. And they call each other, and he's part of the grandparent role. So I'm Jewish. And I wanted my granddaughter to call me Saba, which is Hebrew for grandfather, and I wanted her to call him Zeta, which is Yiddish for grandfather. I ended up being called Grandpa, and he ended up being called Zeta. So, it is what it is. But she thinks of us as dual grandparents, and it all works. We have a crazy family, and it works.
Amazing. I love it. Looking back, what kind of advice would you share based on your own experience to anybody raising a child by themselves, whether foster child or just a single parent by themselves?
Yeah, support groups. Find your group, your family. Your chosen family. I remember sitting around my kitchen table with my friends, and we were talking about the situations I was having with my son at the time, who was, I think, 15. And I had all these people giving me advice. "Oh, you're doing it wrong. Don't do this. Oh, you should try this. You should try that." And I remember looking around at everybody and I said, "How many people at this table have children?" Nobody had a child. I said, "So what you're telling me is based off of your background, your upbringing, you're trying to give me advice. Well, none of you have a foster child. None of you have children. And none of us have had the same background as this child has. He comes from two drug addicted parents, very tumultuous, was ripped out of his house at 9 years old. None of us have had this experience. So if I'm going to go to advice for parenting, I'm going to go to my sister who has two young children and has managed to overcome our childhood experiences to better parent her children. So y'all shut up." So knowing the right people to go to, there was that first group of people that I went through this foster care group with. We all had each other to share ideas with. We got together with the other kids often to just to vent, go to for advice. I looked to other parents as to how they thought I could better handle this. I was very naive in many of my thought patterns and how I thought I was going to raise a child, and I had to come up to speed very quickly. The advice is find your group, find that chosen family that you can go to. I had Amy, who was part of the program, where when I needed a break from him, I called her up, and she always said, "If you ever need a break, or any of you need a break, let us know. We'll give you that opportunity." I called her. I said, "I need a break." And here's the funny part. She ended up taking him in, or it was supposed to be for a 30-day period. He ended up staying for 3 months, and she ended up mothering him to a point where he actually thought of her as a mother figure. And then when he came back to my house, I was the father figure. Well, apparently this relationship got so deep that she actually adopted him as his mother, and I adopted him as his father. And to this day, he goes to her for certain advice. She's a tough woman. So she gives him very tough love. And he comes to me and I give him more spiritual advice, not like religious, but more, well, let's talk about this. Let's figure out why you're having this, and I have tough conversations with him as well, but he gets this dual parent conversations. And then of course he calls me and bitches about her, and he'll call her and bitch about me, and it's a family situation. But what we realized when she took him in for that 30 days is that, oh my God, we're co-parenting. So let's exchange ideas. Let's talk about how you're handling him, and then I can talk about how. And that's what I mean by this chosen family situation. It worked really well for us to a point where, what is it, 27 years later, we're still in it. Try to find that group. That would be my advice.
Thank you. That's beautiful and very well said. Sometimes we don't choose our families, or rather, it's not necessarily blood related, but
Correct.
it's through those interesting connections, different connections, that we find each other.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
think when people are in the process of getting a divorce, you're in turmoil. And a lot of times we tend to get into a relationship with somebody that without giving us a time to think, to break, to breathe. And when we get into that new relationship shortly after our divorce, we find that we're with the same person in a different body. I went through that. I remember my sister telling me, wait 5 years before you get into a new relationship. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? And I just came out of a very toxic, addicted, conditionally loving relationship. I thought I knew everything and that I could immediately get back into a better relationship. But about 3 months into dating this new person, I realized that this is the exact person I had just left in a different body. And when I broke up that relationship, I realized I had to do the hard work so that I didn't keep repeating the same mistakes I was making. And those mistakes were coming from something that was what I grew up with. My parents loved me conditionally. So, of course, it feels natural for me to go into a relationship where I'm loved conditionally, where I'm never enough. I always have to prove myself. I can't just be loved for who I am. So that's the norm. I had to break that norm. And I did that by really doing the hard work through therapy. I know some people can't afford therapy. There was a point where I couldn't afford therapy at all. I couldn't afford anything because the recession had hit and I was broke. But I journaled my thoughts. A lot of people say, why do you journal so much? And I think it's because it's kept me out of therapy. On top of the therapy I did, I probably could have used more, but because I journal my thoughts and I really contemplate what's going on. And if you've ever journaled, you'll see, the power of it. If you haven't journaled because you're like, I don't know what I'm going to write, you don't have to think about it. Just open up the book, take a pen, start writing. You'll see what pours out of you. So I think the journaling, I established affirmations. When you have nothing, when you don't have money for food and the breakup has been so bad that you lost your house and you walked away with nothing and the recession is happening, so your business isn't going anywhere and you basically have to start from nothing. There's always something good that's going on in your life, whether, hey, I got out of bed today and I got, my two legs are working and my heart's pumping and my brain is going and I'm going to survive this day. And then you realize the next day I survived that day and something good came out of it. And yeah, I had more challenges, but I got through the challenges. You just persevere, and affirmations are really good about that. And then I developed goals that I wanted to achieve. And I had a friend that I handed those goals to, and I said, I need you to hold me accountable to them. So a lot of us, we establish goals at the beginning of the year, like, oh, I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to get a better job or whatever. And 3 months into it, you've forgotten what those are because we keep them in our head, right? I was taught take them and put them on paper and then go ahead and keep it at your nightstand every night so you could take a look at it every single night, or post it on the mirror in the bathroom when you're combing your hair or you're brushing your teeth. You're sitting there and you're looking at the goals. You need to remember those things every day, no matter how small they are or how big they are. You need to see them and then have somebody hold you accountable to them. And I'm not talking about, why didn't you do this today? And why didn't you do that today? But let's review it every quarter. Like, hey, did you ever get that done? You know what? I did get that done. All right, well, mark that off the list. And between having those goal sets and doing the affirmations and journaling and having a core group of really good friends that didn't necessarily tell me what I wanted to hear, but were telling me the truth and holding me accountable and making sure I was doing the hard work, it really got me going again and helped me restart my life. So my advice is do any of those things or do all of those things, but don't keep repeating the same mistakes. Break the habit. And it's hard to do. But once you break it, it works. And I'm going to conclude with this. If your life is comfortable, you're not learning anything. It's when life gets really uncomfortable and life challenges you, is how you handle that is when your biggest growth spurt happens. And I've often said that every time I get comfortable, the universe or God shakes me up and says, you're not done yet. You got more to achieve. You got more things to do. And I'm like, oh, but it's really nice being here at this moment. I'm really having fun. They're like, I know, but we're going to shake it up a little bit. And, as they say, shit happens. So when those times come, when you're sitting there and you're like, it couldn't get any worse. It could get a little worse. But what's the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? Why am I here? You picked the wrong person to share your life with. You picked the wrong career. You got to figure this out. You got to do the work. And when it gets really uncomfortable, that's your growth spurt. And if you can get over that and realize what the lesson was, you're like, I wouldn't have learned that had I been complacent. So take the challenge and do the work. That's what I got.
Thank you so much. And it's so, so very well said. We cannot grow inside our comfort zone. We never will ask the question why we are here, because everything is going according to our imagined or perceived reality and our expectations are matching our external reality. So we
Yep.
never ask unless we are shaken.
Correct.
What
Kind of
is
like that snow globe you shake, and all the snow's flying all over the place. That's kind of like how life is, like a snow globe. It's like I'm gonna shake it up a little bit, and shit's gonna happen. But if you're strong enough, you're gonna survive it. And you're gonna be better for it.
what is one of your non-negotiables during like a daily thing you cannot live without?
And yeah, I've learned that a couple of years ago, to take time out, whether it's 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes before you go to bed, or whether it's 10 minutes before you go to work, to sit in a quiet place, quiet your mind, and just breathe and ask for help. I often get messages that I really need to hear. When I journal, I get messages that I need to hear. The messages are there for you to receive. You just need to quiet your mind enough to receive them. So my new non-negotiables are taking time out to meditate and exercise. They have this thing, it's called the Green Zone. It's a documentary, I think, on Netflix.
Yeah.
And they want to know why people all over the world are living to over 100 years old. And what it really got down to is they had a community of friends that they saw every day. They exercised and moved around, and they kept their mind active. So these are all things, every time I have to get up at 6 a.m. to go to a CrossFit class, I'm like, I got to get up and move around. And, I got to stay young, got to keep my mind going. And I do have that core group. So the must-tos are exercise and definitely meditate.
Totally. I love it. Yes, so important. I also believe in those things. Physical body, emotional, mental, to keep it going. And yeah, totally right. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you. If anybody would like to learn more about the work that you're doing, where would they go?
Real simple. NASDF.org, just like it says there on my picture. You'll see all the benefits. It's easy to join. It's only $19 a month. And you get stuff like discounts for early childhood educations at La Petite Academy, Montessori, U-Growth places. You've got free mental health care, 3 free sessions, and then discounted sessions thereafter. You've got career services, real estate services. So if you need to buy or sell your house and you come to us for a realtor referral, we're going to go ahead and give you a 25% of whatever that commission is that we're receiving back to you towards your closing costs. So it's a huge savings. Not use us is losing money. So if you're paying $19 a month and you use this for a real estate transaction, you are 1,000 times ahead of the game. If you've used us for mental health care, like I said, 3 free mental health care sessions, you're way ahead of the game for the $19 a month, along with all the other products, services, and resources that we have. And then, of course, if you want to purchase Support Insured, go to the same website. You'll see the tab. The instructions are very easy.
Thank you so much. We'll include everything in episode notes. It's been awesome to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time and energy, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you for listening to Single Parent Success Stories. If today's conversation reminded you of anything, let it be this. You were never meant to rebuild your life completely alone. Whether you are navigating divorce, single parenthood, emotional exhaustion, or simply trying to rediscover yourself after a difficult season, support matters, healing matters, community matters, and asking for help is not a weakness. It's often the beginning of rebuilding something stronger. And if this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to follow the podcast, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps us continue sharing stories, resources, and conversations that remind people they are not alone during life's hardest transitions. And remember, sometimes the hardest chapters of our lives become the very chapters that reconnect us to who we truly are. Until next time, keep reclaiming your strengths, your peace, and your life.